Assalamu alaikum everybody, and hello everybody. Today I'm gonna make a video, a little bit of a change in the content. Today I'm gonna make a video about the Israel-Palestine conflict and its origins. And this is actually really just a less detailed version of where you can see the whole thing in a much better explanation than what I'm gonna give. It's the Martyr Made podcast, Fear and Loathing in New Jerusalem. That's the podcast, 6 episodes, I think 5 episodes. It's like 20 hours of content. It's really detailed. It covers everything really clearly, the origin of this conflict, and up until the creation of Israel, and also into 1968 when the next war happened, that basically caused where Palestine officially lost all the land and there was no more Palestine. It was just Gaza and the West Bank. But I'm gonna give a much less detailed version of that, just so you guys can, who doesn't want to watch 6 hours, can get something, because there's a thing that I'm seeing going around. I've actually had some people who really didn't know anything try to tell me that, oh, the Arabs and the Jews have been fighting for 1,000 years and stuff like that. No, this conflict is from about 1890. The idea for creating Israel started, and it's been happening since like 1910. It's about 110 years old, and the official creation of Israel was in 1947. So this is not like a ancient conflict. This particular conflict, this is something that's been happening for around 70 years since the creation of Israel. And before that, when Israel was being created, and people, they have this idea. Some people are just siding with Israel completely, and it's not really based on any solid logic. But some people have this idea that every conflict has to really have two sides. And if you really look at the origin of this conflict and what's been going on, you'll see like there's not a two-sided conflict. This is an oppressor-oppressed situation. And I really want to talk about first I'm going to talk about quickly I'm going to talk about the origin of Zionism, and why Zionism started, and then how the Israel was created, and what they did after they created it, just a little bit. This is more of an origin of the conflict story. So the beginning of Zionism, I believe it was 1890, something like that, sometime around there, because Jews living in Europe up until that point had been really suffering from a lot of oppression. The Christian people that lived in Europe really didn't like the Jews. They really put a lot of pressure on them. There would be a lot of riots where people would Jews would get beaten. Police officers didn't really protect Jews' rights in their society, so they were really suffering being a minority in Europe, and getting kicked around more or less. So what had happened was in 1890, a congregation of some Jewish people came together and said, okay, we need a way we need our own land, we need our own homeland where we're gonna have our own freedom of self-determination, our own rights. So what they came together. They said, okay, we have this land. It's called Palestine now. These Jews aren't necessarily religious either. This is more or less like a terrorist movement where you use a religious excuse to justify something that you want to do for a political reason. Like it's kind of terror, like religious terrorism. So they said, okay, we need land. There's a land. It was owned by the Jews, 2,000 years ago, whatever. At the time of after Moses, and the Jews lived there for some time, 1,000 years before, 2,000 years before, whatever. So we're gonna use this excuse that this is the homeland of the Jews in the Bible, and we're gonna get the Jewish people riled up, and we're gonna take this land for Jews to live in. Even though it's already being occupied by Palestinians, we're gonna take it. So we have two ways. Either one way, we're gonna come in with our guns right away, and we're gonna colonize it, like white people have done throughout history. Europeans tended to do that a lot before, and these were European Jews. They are Europeans. This is nothing new to Europeans to colonize land and to take land from another group. But they said maybe that's not gonna work. So the other plan we can do, we can go there, put people there, pretend to be friends with them, buy land, supply weapons to the people who own the land, get some control over the area, and then we're going to take over. So that was the plan they decided to go with because it was a little too risky to just come in there guns a blazing. So what they said was they had one Jewish person who who was like kind of at the like was going to be the one who starts off the Zionist project. So he went to the British and he told the British, listen, this one Jewish individual, I forgot his name. He said, okay, we are gonna, we want to live in Palestine. We don't want to take it from the Palestinians. He lied to them. He said, we just want to live there as neighbors with the Palestinians. So please, send some Jewish people as immigrants from Europe and from Britain down to Palestine, and let us, start living there with the Palestinians. And the Palestinians heard this proposition. They said, yeah, of course, let our brothers come here. We know the Jews are suffering in Europe. We are Ishmael, they are Ishaq. Ismail and Isaac. The origin of Arabs and Jews is basically they're both from Abraham, and his sons Abraham and Isaac they're his sons Isaac and Ishmael are their forefathers. They said, this is our brother Isaac, let them come stay with us, not knowing that they were planning this whole time to basically screw them out of their land. They thought this was an innocent, we want to live there with you and we just want to escape oppression. It wasn't. They were planning this from the beginning. So the British heard this proposition. They said, yeah, sure, let's start sending Jews from Europe to this land of Palestine, to live in Palestine alongside Palestinians. So that's how it started. So they started then Jewish people. This was in 1890 to 1900. Sometime around that time, the Jews started importing in from Europe and started coming to live in Palestine and buying land and living there. And there was a notice right away. The Palestinians kind of noticed these people didn't like them very much. There was hostility right away, and it was kind of obvious that these were not really their friends. So these people were living there, and so World War I started happening around this time, and Jews were being imported into Palestine, and they started buying land. They buying a lot of land, and the first people who felt this kind of impact were the lower class Palestinians who were out of jobs, the farmers. They were like, oh, we're not getting jobs anymore. Like these Zionists, these Jews are basically buying up the farmland and buying up our jobs, and they're giving it to Jews, and we're not getting work. And there was a little bit of unrest happening because of that. And the British who were funding this whole thing didn't know what this was the plan of the Jews either. They didn't know about this still. And there was a kind of a right-wing part of the Israeli Zionist movement that was in Palestine that was very open about what they wanted to do in Palestine. The other part where they all agreed they were going to take the land, but they were not speaking about it openly. The kind of more far right-wing Zionist people started announcing, hey, we're going to take this land to the Palestinians, just saying in the streets, we're going to take this land, this is going to be our home. And the Palestinians are getting kind of distressed by this. And then they found that a few times Palestinians found that the Jewish people were importing weapons to the Jews living there. They were getting weapons imported, and then they're getting more. The unrest is getting pretty serious because now they see, oh, these people are importing weapons to their foot soldiers on the ground, and they're basically in the streets saying they're going to take over our land. And then it comes to a point of extreme unrest. There's a lot of poverty starting to happen to the lower class Palestinians who are farmers. They're realizing, oh, okay, we're not getting jobs anymore. People are starting to get frustrated, and it comes to a boiling point when some Zionists from the right wing went to Jerusalem and started marching in the streets with their weapons, saying, we are going to take this land, this is going to be our land. And they were stating it openly, we're going to take this from you. And they were marching down the streets and singing and stating this. And this caused a big unrest, and then there was a big riot, and the Palestinians basically, they killed a bunch of the people, a bunch of the Jews who were there. They were like, okay, you want to take our land? And then they rioted, and the Palestinians gathered together and started killing some of the Jewish people. And that was when the British got wind of what was actually going on, because every time a report came to the British from the Palestinians, saying, hey, why are these people doing this? They're talking about taking our land. It got swept underneath the table, and they weren't getting it. The Zionists who were involved in English politics, they were not allowing that information to get through to the British. So now the information comes through to the British, and the British come together, they counsel with the Zionists, and they say, okay, We didn't talk about giving you these people's land. We didn't do that. We weren't telling you we weren't going to give you the land. So why are you, then the intention is because they say, no, we want the land. We want the land for ourselves. And, the British said, well, there's too much unrest. We can't leave the Palestinians completely in charge. Let's split the land because maybe, these people will stop fighting if we do that. And the Zionists, when they offered a split of the land, the Zionists who were at that meeting, they said, no, we're not going to take that split. We want all the land. Why would we split the land? We want all of this. And the British got frustrated. Like, oh, we weren't going to give you anything. You were supposed to live under them. And now because of this unrest, we're going to give you some land. You don't want it? Okay, don't take it. Don't split the land. When this happened, the Zionists didn't take any land. They said, no, we're not going to split the land. We want all of it. They rejected this offer. So then, this is when it got intense. The Zionists basically started getting together in militias that were living in Palestine and just conquering, killing Palestinians. They had weapons now. They militarized. They started killing Palestinians. They started, taking their land. They started taking their houses. They started, murdering them and torturing them and being very brutal with them. And then now it comes back to the British again. And after this severe militia that's happened, that they've come and they've done a lot of damage to the Palestinians. Then what happens is World War II happens, and now it's the Allies against the Nazis, and there has to be they're doing this for the Jews, so they're trying to, the Allies have an image to uphold that they were supporting the Jews. So this is what the situation is. The British can't fight Jews in Palestine because it would look bad in the public eye when they're trying to help Jews. So the decision comes back to the British. They said, okay, this needs to stop. We're not going to let you keep killing, Palestinians and conquering the land. That's what you're doing. So we're going to stop this now, and we're not going to allow, we're going to decrease the amount of Jews that can import into Palestine. So they got reduced. They reduced the number. They stopped the importation so they didn't get flooded with Jews and get taken over. They reduced the import of Palestinian of Jews, and they basically said, no, we're not going to allow you to. We're not going to allow you to conquer these people. We're going to protect them now. We're not going to allow your militias to come in and kill them and take their houses. So then the Zionists, they got angry. They said, okay, we're going to start killing the British then. These are just terrorists. These are terrorists. These are a group of terrorists who had a religious reason to do what they did. They used the Bible to justify them taking these land from these people. And then when they were told off and told to stop by the British, they started killing the British. They started wiping the British out. And this was not a group of Zionists that were acting independently. It was very clear these were the heads of the Zionist movement who had talked to Britain in the first place. They were doing this against the British as well. And they started killing the British soldiers in Palestine. And they started, because the British were not allowing ships to take Jews who were coming out of concentration camps in Europe. They weren't allowing, and coming out of the oppressed the areas of Europe that there was oppression happening because of the Germans. They weren't allowing the Jews to come to Palestine. The Jews got more angry. The Zionists, they got more mad. Like, okay, they're not going to let us import our people to here. They're going to stop us from taking over these people's lands. Let's fight the British. They started fighting the British. They started doing a lot of damage to the British, and the British are like, okay, we need an excuse to fight these people because, we know this is the Zionists doing. This is not a ragtag group of Jews. This is really like the heads of the Zionist movement supporting this. We need to basically, prove to the international community that these are terrorists and we're not actually just killing Jews because we're the allies. We're the allies. They weren't supposed to be. They were supposedly fighting for justice for the Jews. So it would look bad if they just started killing the Jews in Palestine who were attacking the British now. So they used the radio. They were the same way they were able to intercept the radio conversation of the Nazis. They used that to intercept the Jewish radios, and they found that it's actually the Zionist leaders who are doing this. It's not just a ragtag group of Jews. They kept that information in a hotel in Palestine. They kept it there, and they said, we're going to keep this and we're going to show this to the international community. The Zionists get very desperate because they know if this comes out, then the British are going to be able to wage full war on these people. So they actually blew up that hotel. The Zionist group, they blew up that hotel and destroyed all that information. And the British are getting very frustrated. So this internal war in Palestine between the British and the Zionists are happening at this point. And it's happening at this point. And then afterwards, the World War II ends, and the British say, okay, we're not going to deal with this anymore. This is too much for us. We can't kill these Jews. We can't wipe them out. But we can't stay here because they're going to keep killing us. Let's put this to the international community. Let's put this to USA. Let's put this to America, and let's put this to the UN. Let's put this to the UN for a decision, because the UN was just formed, I think, 3 years before. And the reality was, the Jewish people had a lot of pull in politics in America and around the world too. But they owned a lot of big business companies. A lot of trade was run by the Zionists in America. And so what happened was, America, Russia, and one other group in the UN. The UN was just created, I think, 2 years before. They wanted what happened was, they put the decision to the UN, and a proposition was given: let's split the land between Palestinians and Jews because of this. And actually the idea, the UN in general agreed, no, this isn't fair. This was not. We shouldn't give this land to Israelis, to Jews, because they just came in and conquered it. They're doing this. We can't do this to the Palestinians. This is not right. And America wanted to give the land to the Israelis because they were being influenced by Zionists in the country, and Russia and another country, I forgot what it was. It was one other country too, and they got all the people who were on the UN to support this movement that the motion that they were gonna split the land between Israel and Palestine, Jews and Arabs. But even with all their influence, when the people at the delegation, the delegates gave their speeches, it was clear that it was not going to be a vote. They were not going to split the land. The Palestinians were going to keep their land. So when the speech was given and it was clear that was the case, then what happened was, some Zionists used their influence, and they got the person running the UN to basically delay the motion, delay the final say for 2 days or 3 days, I think it was. It was still a Friday. And so in the time between when the delegates gave their speeches and it was clear that Palestine was going to stay under Palestinians' control and it wasn't going to be divided into Israel and Palestine, during that time for the decision, what had happened was the Zionists in America got blackmailed the American government, they basically pushed America to blackmail all the other countries that were gonna vote towards keeping the land in Palestine, and they got America to threaten them, or the big business owners from the Zionists in America said they would cut off trade with those countries and threatened to cut off trade or cause some issue or threatened with war with the Americans during that time. And then what happened was, those countries changed their vote during those 2-3 days. And a person at the UN said, hey, if we, let this corruption, make our decision for us, this UN that we've created is going to be a joke. This is not, we can't let people, change our emotions like this using corruption. But the Zionists did it. They managed to change a bunch of the people's votes in the UN, and the UN passed the motion, and Israel and Palestine was divided into two lands, with some Jews living in the Palestinian territory and some Arabs living in the Jewish territory. Now, if this was the end of the story, it would be corrupt, it would be bad, but it wouldn't be, what it is now. What happened, as soon as they divided the land, the Israelis went militant and wiped out almost all the Palestinians living in their land, in their part of the territory. Wiped them out and expelled them and sent them packing to the part that was Palestinian owned. So they weren't doing this. They weren't just killing them, bro. They were killing them, mutilating their bodies, and dragging their bodies through the streets and mocking and laughing about it. They were raping the women, and they were really punishing these people severely. Even though they were the one, and it's not like it was a few. They were actually, like, the Palestinians were reaching out their hand to help the Jews in the beginning. And these people immediately, as soon as they took over, they didn't just kill them because they wanted land. They actually went out of the way to be extra brutal and cruel about it. So after they've wiped out most of the Palestinians in the Israeli part and expelled the other ones to the Palestinian part of Israel, which is the part that was given to the Palestinians, then they went and conquered the part of Palestine that was given to the Palestinians. They immediately conquered it, and they attacked it, and they raped the women, killed a lot of the men who were able to fight so that there would be no resistance, and then expelled the rest, expelled the women and children, and the men that they left alive, which were few. They expelled them, and those people were walking through the desert in the middle of summer, walking to the other Arab countries. When they got to the other Arab countries, they told them, they said, hey, look, this is what we just lost. 60% of the land we were given by the UN. We've been killed, raped, and punished. Like, you guys need to do something about this. Like, this is not okay. So the Arab countries attacked Israel. Now, I've actually heard someone tell me, oh, well, when Israel was created, the Arab countries attacked it right away. Do you have any idea what had actually just happened? This was an absolute catastrophe that had happened before this. The Arab countries attack. The war ends quickly. I think it was America that intervened and basically made it stop that war. It may have been just the war to stop because they weren't able to fight the Israelis, but the war stops pretty quickly, and 60% of the land has been taken, and the Palestinians have been brutalized. Now remember, this is not a feud. The Palestinians didn't do anything to these people. These people, the Palestinians offered them to come and live with them and said, yeah, come live with us, brother. And the whole time they were planning to screw them. And when they screwed them, they didn't even do it just to gain something. They went out of their way to be brutal. They were raping the women and cutting the people and dragging them through the streets, laughing about it. And it was a complete, this is sinister in a way that can't be described. It's horrible. And the thing is, you want to talk, the Holocaust, all this bad stuff happened to Jewish people, as soon as they get out of that situation, and actually before that they were already planning to do it, but they do something like on the same level to someone else who was trying to help them, just for the sake of being cruel. There was not any reason to have animosity towards the Arabs. They didn't just kill them, take them. They went out of their way to be extra brutal with these people. So, this is just monsters. So then, in the Arabs have been punished, and they still had 40% of Palestine, and they were living there. And then in 1968, I think another war happened, and the Israelis basically took 100% of Palestine. They took all the land except for the West Bank and Gaza, and they pushed all the Arabs into a open air prison, Gaza, and except for the ones in the West Bank in Gaza, and they surrounded them with turrets. And they cut off food and water. They punished these people for so long. They made these people live in unlivable conditions. And then, you've been punishing these people, and they never made an attempt to make amends for this. They have not once apologized. They have justified this cruelty up until today. And then in 1987 or 88, Hamas is formed. Okay, so wait, would you do something different? Would you not build a military operation when you are being systematically destroyed and having food and water cut off from you, and the other side did not make an attempt to apologize? There is no attempt to make amends. They justify it, and they continue to justify it, and the West continues. Israel has the right to protect itself. Israel has the right. Israel was created by a terrorist group. They are terrorists, and they have continued to terrorize and not made any amends and continue to punish these people. And up until now, up until October 7th, they had continued to commit war crimes, murder these people, kill children, kill women. And yet Palestinians were fighting back too sometimes, but this was a completely one-sided affair they have not made any attempt to make amends. And then inside of Israel, if you want to talk about injustice, they have inside of Israel a law. The Palestinians who live inside of Israel, they are not safe. They can lose their home at any time. So if there's no making amends, even the ones that live there, American Jewish man can decide he wants to move to Israel. They will kick a Palestinian out of their house and give it to the Jewish person. This state does not make amends. It has no apologies for what it's done, and it's continued to do it. They are terrorists. It's as simple as that. And and then in October 7th happens, and it's like, oh, you're surprised that these Palestinians don't mind killing civilians. I mean, it's not a good thing. I don't justify that civilians being killed is a good thing. But if you're throwing a big festival on land that you stole and you've continued to oppress people, what do you think that, if you were Palestinians, you would have done anything different? They killed some civilians, and then Israel, who has not made any amends for what they've done, who continuously from when Hamas was created and before that have committed war crimes and have been punishing these people and cutting off food and cutting off water and making their life miserable. They use this as the excuse to go full militant and start wiping these people out, and that's really what they want to do. They want to wipe all the Gazans out, and they want to take all the land, and then they're probably going to continue expanding. If you look at what they want to do with their greater Israel, the idea that Israel wants to have more land than it does now to get the ancient Israel of the Bible, because they're terrorists, they're religious terrorists who want to use their religious reason to try to to kind of justify war. They want to take more land, and yeah, man, it's a one-sided affair, and there is no two sides to this. It's not a two-sided affair. This is a one-sided affair. These are oppressors and oppressed situation, and Israel really and this is the thing that gets me, right? So I'm a Muslim. I don't support terrorism. I don't support ISIS. I don't support Al Qaeda. I don't support. I didn't support ISIS. I didn't support Taliban. I haven't. I've never been a supporter of that stuff. However, I do support the Palestinians' right to defend themselves and to fight their oppressors. Absolutely, I do. I stand in absolute solidarity with them. They have the right to protect themselves completely. And the thing is, a lot of Americans. Okay, there's a thing going on in the American Christian community where they basically said that the Jews have a religious right to this country, to Israel, and we support them without exception. They're going to be supported under all conditions. So those same Christians love to call Muslims terrorists and call even the Muslims, I've heard them say that even the Muslims who aren't terrorists sympathize with terrorists, because it's true, some Muslims sympathize with ISIS and Al Qaeda, even though it's not as many of them as you would think. The general Muslims and even the general Muslim scholarship does not support that. But still, there are some that do. But almost all the American Protestant Christians support Israel. And they do it on a religious basis. They say, it's because Jews have the right to that land and we have to support them. So these are a whole country of terrorist sympathizers who accuse Muslims of being terrorists, accuse us of being terrorist sympathizers. They're supporting, using a religious reason, a state that was founded by a group of terrorists and who have continued their terrorism. And they use their religion to justify it. I don't see the hypocrisy is amazing. And like I said, I don't support terrorism. I do support the Palestinians' right to defend themselves. I'm not going to condemn them for the things they've done, because the reality is they have been punished, and there has been no attempt to make amends. There has been a continual perpetration against them. America supports Israel like the government supports them, and it's probably because there's a lot of Zionists running the show in the back of politics, and it kind of forces the hand. Even Trump, who I'm not a big fan of Trump, but Trump and his supporters have basically said we don't want to support Israel, even if it's a selfish reason. They don't want to fund wars outside of their own country. You can tell that when he allies with them, when he helps them, it's like some people in black suits probably came to him and told him, hey, you got to do what we say, and it's Zionist influence in America. And yeah, man, Israel is a terrorist country. Its beginning was terrorism. Its continuation is terrorism. And just a quick point, I want to point out, America is not America. Like the Bible says that you can't take back Israel until the coming of the Messiah. Anyways, and Jesus, if you believe in Jesus the Messiah and you're Christian, he's not here yet. He left. He's gone. And if you're a Jew, you don't believe the Messiah is here. Even their religious argument in the Bible does not work. It doesn't support itself. It's a fraudulent religious idea. So yeah, it's not based on anything. It's even their scripture disagrees with them, and they're wrong. It's just a political movement justified with religion. Assalamu alaikum everybody, and bye bye everybody. Hope you enjoyed this content.